Hi everyone, this is Sal with Moon Valley Nurseries, and one of the questions we get asked about quite a bit is how to water trees and shrubs. Quick thing we like to do is try to kind of diagnose what we're talking about for starters, and are we talking about newly planted items, and you kind of dive in from there. So I'll start with that. A real common thing we like to go over is to make sure, number one, that you've got your care guide from us. Inside your care guide, you should have all of your paperwork from your purchase, but you also are going to have some of the paperwork, for example, that goes over the watering. And just to make sure that we're kind of starting things off on the right step there, we want to make sure that we're kind of going over and keeping things consistent. It's really important. Whatever we do with watering, it's consistency first and foremost. So for example, we like to go over and kind of diagnose, are we talking about low water using trees, something that's maybe more Mediterranean, or something that's more of a tropical type, maybe luxurious kind of palm tree type background or palm landscape. So once we diagnose that it's a new planted item and let's say that it's a low water using tree, we like to go over the exact age group that it is and the time of year. So for this instance, we're going to talk about, let's say, the summer months. Well, in the summer months, we want to water a newly planted, say the first 2 years, desert tree 2 to 3 times per week. So it's really easy to follow the guidelines. We've got tons of information on our website, tons of information in some of our blogs. It's obviously in our watering and care guides, and of course you got friendly nursery guides at any one of our locations that can give this to you. The next part of this equation is we get asked all the time, how long do I run my system for? And that one's a little tougher. It's not quite as easy to answer. We need to know, again, in the beginning, just what exactly we're using for an irrigation system. And this is where we're getting into what I'd say a little bit more of an educated guess, where we're giving you, based on the information you're giving us, we're giving you as much as we can from that as feedback. So again, for starters, are we using a flood irrigated lot? Are we watering with a hose? Are we using a soaker hose? Are we using something maybe like a drip system? Are we using a soaker, like a bubbler system, for example? They're all a little different. So the most common one that we see most of our clients working with is the irrigation systems that are going to have the poly tubing, the black poly tubing that comes out from the ground. And it really depends on the emitter size when we're talking that. So if we can make a recommendation, using a adjustable port emitter is really helpful. They're the little tubes, and they actually crank open and twist open from 0 to say 10 gallons per hour. We have a really good idea how many gallons you're getting on there in a frequency, a time window. If you're using a flag emitter, those things tend to clog, calcium builds up in them, so we usually end up seeing those getting replaced over a period of time. And if you're using a like a port emitter and it just looks like a little flying saucer, those are a little better, but they just don't go to as many gallons per hour, so you need to add more emitters to your tree, but they definitely work well. So again, that'll be the first thing we're talking about, is trying to diagnose what you're using and so on. And if your clock's working and everything's great, from there we can tell you, okay, you need this many minutes or this many hours and this many gallons as we go. So one thing we like to kind of look at is again, the tree size itself, which we absolutely have that in all of our packets. There's tree sizes and recommendations. For example, our palm tree care guides, and it's going to go over a little bit more detail again on that specific tree, or maybe the amount of gallons that we would like to recommend for the watering. And if one of our recommendations would be, say, 20 gallons of water, we like to water things for a length of time for, let's say, an hour. That's ideal. You get a nice deep soak to it. The idea is we're going to get the edge of the root mass wet a little bit beyond and all the way to the bottom of the current root ball that we installed. It's really important to get that entire newly installed root mass soaking wet, and again beyond that, so it draws moisture from the soil over a period of time. And in order to get 20 gallons, let's say you have 3 emitters on there, to get 20 gallons in an hour, you need to have about 7 gallons, or obviously going to get a little bit over, but 7 gallons of water per emitter in that hour's length of time to get to that 20 gallon mark. It's okay to go just a hair over, maybe a smidge under, but not extremes on either way. And again, those are where we get into those educated guesses and so on. You can always test it by going and putting a gallon jug out there, letting the emitter run into that gallon jug and let it run for an hour and see how many gallons are coming out, or a 5 gallon bucket and let it see how many gallons fill that thing up. There's other ways to do that, but generally speaking, we want to make sure that when we water, we're watering to the right depth of the tree. So with that being said, get yourself a probe. An old stick of rebar, a dowel rod, something along those lines works really, really well. You can push that in the soil, and if it goes in with relative ease, you're probably watering right the way you should. You want that tree to dry out, get some oxygen, and kind of recover from the watering before you water it again. So we never want to see you water every single day unless it's literally the first couple days it's in the ground. After that, we like to see them follow our guidelines, the once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, and spread those out evenly. If you notice that your soil, for whatever reason, is drying out super fast or staying extra moist, you can make an adjustment from there. But if you start with the guidelines, it's the best baseline to get you the right trees in the right watering. When we go to a more mature tree, it's typically less frequent. So we're not watering as often as 3 or 4 times a week on a certain type of plant. We're watering maybe once every 7 to 10 to 14 days. But when you do, you're using a lot more gallons at the same time. So the idea again is to really saturate that root mass. Mature trees have much wider and much deeper roots in most cases. So your irrigation shouldn't be at the base of the tree, it should be out at the width of the tree, especially on more mature trees. That's really important. Water at that canopy edge, that tree line, really important there. And soak that guy in, let it dry out entirely before you go ahead and water it again. Those long, deep, infrequent waterings is what keeps those trees not only healthier, but it allows them to root in better and keeps them from blowing over and things along those lines down the road. So that's super important. And again, consistency is key. If you water it a little here and a little there, and sometimes you water it once every 10 days, sometimes it's once every 2 weeks, sometimes it's once a month, that's when we see some things pop up and some inconsistencies. So watering is really easy to do if you're consistent with it. You keep the same pattern with it, regardless if you're using a hose, soaker system, drip system, whatever it is, be consistent, stick to a pattern. Definitely ask one of the nursery pros so we can give you the right advice. And if you're using that in conjunction with the right fertilizers and moon products, your trees are going to grow very well for you. It's an easy way to keep your trees healthy for life.